Hey guys, it's Charles Osterlund here with Liquid Blue Cabarete in Cabarete, Dominican Republic. And a while ago, we already made one of these videos sort of talking about what type of gear you want when you're a beginner, especially in regards to the board, because the wind, the wing side, you're gonna be scaling it to the wind of your area. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about what's the right board for a beginner, and then also what's the right board for once you're past that beginner stage into an intermediate. Right here, I have the Rocket Wing, it's huge. I got the Rocket Wing 6.2 ASC by F1, and this board is 130 liters. So to put that into reference, the board I ride personally is a 44 liter board, and even sometimes a 33. So this is around 3 times the size of what someone that is intermediate might be using. And then in terms of the foil here, you can't see it on the screen, but this is a 65 centimeter mast with a 2200 front wing, the Gravity. And this is essentially the biggest board we use for when we're teaching people how to wing foil. The only reason why we might use an even bigger board is because the person is either very big. What do I mean by very big? Over 220 pounds, or which is around 100 and something kilos. I'm not sure exactly, but around 100 something kilos. Or someone just needs help with their balance. So that's when we're gonna opt in for using something like a 150 liter, 170 liter, maybe even a 200 liter windsurf dagger board, which is not gonna have the foil on it, but it will have the volume that someone might need to start getting the first exercises down. So in any case, here we have this 130 liter board, which generally we use for people that are over around 170 pounds, roughly speaking. If someone is less than 170 pounds, we're most likely gonna be using a 110 liter board, which is just gonna be a little bit less volume, a little bit smaller, so it's just easier to manipulate, let's say, while you're in the water. That's one of the things that a lot of people sort of forget, that if you get the biggest board out there, but you're the smallest rider, then it's gonna be a little bit tricky for you to sort of manage the board when you're in the water, even just lifting it up. You know, I myself, just carrying this board, it's pretty heavy. So, you know, if you don't have the strength to carry the board, carrying a wing, and doing all of that, then you're just gonna have a hard time sort of doing this thing called board management, getting inside the water, getting outside the water, and it's just gonna be a little bit making your life tough. So when you scale the board, because you might not need that much volume, we got a little bit of rain here for this video. So basically, when you're gonna have a board that's too big, you might just have too much board and you're at a point of diminishing returns. So that's why we scale down for certain size individuals that are, let's say, 110, 120, 140 pounds when they're trying out the sport. So in any case, guys, what we're gonna do now, if this rain doesn't stop, which it might, I feel that it's gonna stop, we're gonna set up a board so you can see how it is to set up a board, and then we'll just talk a little bit about the safety equipment that we also should be considering to use while we're out there. So I have a feeling this rain's gonna keep going, and we're gonna head inside. Alrighty. So here we are. We're going to film indoors to get this, this board set up. Behind me, we have different size boards. And for the sake of this example, we're just gonna grab a 110 liter board. It's gonna be right here. We're gonna grab a 110 liter board. And we're going to put these away. So here I got my board. It's a 110 liter board, the same sort of size, and apologies here, the same sort of size that we had outside, but just a smaller version. The same board, but the smaller version. So right now, I always usually leave the screws inside the board, just so that it's easier whenever we're gonna have to put on another foil. But the screws are already on, so usually once you're setting up a board, you're gonna have to make sure when you buy one that it comes with the hardware. So this is the T-nut and just the screw of the size. This uses an M6. And then we're gonna need a mast. So here I'm just gonna grab any mast just to get ourselves set up. So we got our mast. Boom. We're gonna need a foil. And what we do here is that we leave all the gear usually ready to go. So here you can already tell I got my screws on. That's gonna help me connect the foil to the mast. And then we already have the screws onto the board. And with the new track systems, it's very easy just to set up your foil to the board. So we got our screws in, and just loosen it by hand just to get it on. Alrighty. And one thing that's important to note, so we come here real quick just to see this, is that on the back side of the board, on the track system, usually you're gonna have a set of numbers. And what these numbers are essentially a reference point for yourself. They will say more lift and less lift, but basically it's a reference point for yourself. And depending on your style of riding and what board you have, where you're gonna position the foil is going to have an effect on the feeling on the water. But generally speaking, for us with these F1 rocket boards, we usually set up the foil between 3 and 4. That seems to be sort of the sweet spot for this, this board and this track system. So we're just gonna put it at 3.5. And roughly what you can tell that's interesting, and this is what I always do anyways with a new board, is I always set up the foil somewhere in the middle of the track system. The middle of the track system here seems like it's around 4.5, but we're just gonna go down to that 3.5 number that I mentioned. And for the sake of this example, it's gonna do the trick. What we wanna do is tighten up our foil. And this is a perfect day to learn how to set up some gear because it's raining right now. So this is a really good time to do this. So here we are, getting these screws nice and tight. You wanna make sure that you get all of this really tight. And how do I gauge how tight I want it? Well, I will crank it down until I realize I can't really turn anymore with general strength. And I might give it just a little spin extra at that point. So it's sort of a feeling thing. Or if I start hearing sounds as well, I know it's getting to that tightness. So there, hear that. And then here it feels, and then you see I can't really tighten just with general strength, so I'll just give it a little half spin, and we're good to go. Up here, we'll get these screws out. One thing you can tell is that the screws have like a bit of a white sort of film on it, and that's because we use a grease that helps. We're riding in salt water, so salt water, as you know, is always going to be messing up your gear. And this is Ultra Tough Gel, something you can get on Amazon, probably, or at a marine shop. Looks like this white sort of paste. And a little goes a long way here. I've had this for a while. I just dip the screw in to get a little bit on. And then I will mix this. I just use a little bit, to be honest. Works pretty well, so I'll leave that there. Let me get the foil. This mast and foil connection is very easy. Just sort of locks in. Boom, ready to go. Get my first screw. Get my second screw. Try not to get any of that grease anywhere because it's super sticky. And then once that's all tightened up, just gonna put this away. All right. And we will tighten this up. And you see how nicely it goes in? That's sort of what you want to look for. If you're having a hard time screwing your screws in, it's probably because it's not lined up properly. All right, so we got that nice and tight. Same idea here. When I'm tightening, I just bring it up to where I feel that it's tight. I put some downward pressure, and then just a little spin until I feel that I can't really do it anymore. Before every session, I like to make sure that everything that has a screw is nice and tight. So I also just check this one. Oh, perfect. And there, I had a little bit of loosening. Here we also have a couple of screws. So I just like to check this out. You could do this before you put it on, but since I didn't do it before, yeah, and everything seems nice and tight. Perfect. So now we're not gonna need this anymore, so I'm gonna put that away. So after you have your board set up, you wanna make sure that nothing is loose, everything is good. Here in wingfoiling, luckily, and same in kiteboarding, we're not dealing with any wax like surfers. So we have our pad is all good to go. We got our surf leash here where we're gonna have to set up, make sure we have a leash on the board. And then after that point, once we've selected our board and we have it all prepared, this is all we need. Now my board is ready to go riding, and I can go out there. When I'm learning, I'm gonna go out there with a leash. Maybe later on, depending on what I'm doing, I might not be using a leash anymore. But when you're learning, you for sure wanna have a leash on. And this, even though this is equipment that's gonna be connected to yourself, but basically you're also gonna have a waist leash that's gonna go around you. And here, you're gonna attach your board leash to your waist leash. And you could also just leave this like that, but we always carry this separate, and then we attach it on. And once we get it on, once we have this on, then boom, we got this attached back here, connected to the board, and very easy to maneuver. Alrighty, after we have our board set up, what are we gonna need as a rider? Well, we're gonna need our impact vest, we're gonna need a helmet, and then we're also gonna need our wing. And in terms of wings, the reason why I don't really mention too much what size wing is recommended is because it's gonna depend on where you are in the world. If you are in, let's say, Cape Town, where it's blowing 25, 40 knots, I can't say that the 5 square meter is gonna be the best wing for you, and this is the one you're gonna wanna use. It's not gonna correlate to your spot. So this is really gonna depend on where you are, and then also the size of rider. If you're a rider who, as we were mentioning before, if you're a bigger individual and you're over 220 pounds, let's say 100 and I think it's like 100, 110 kilos, you know, there, you're probably gonna have to scale your gear up, but you already know that because in most sports you do, as a larger individual, you're gonna have to use different gear than the recommended size. So we have to remember that when we're looking on websites of what does the F1 strike or what the F1 swing or a duotone wing, what does it recommend me to use in terms of the wind range, that's gonna be for the average individual. And the average individual generally is the size small, size medium type of people. Once you start going to large XL, then you know you always have to sort of scale up whatever recommendations someone might give you. So in terms of the wings, I would look at what they recommend online, and then usually I would aim for the bigger side of whatever it is I am doing. If you use a wing that's too small, it's like using a kite that's too small, it's like using a surfboard that's too small, it's just gonna make it harder for you to learn because you're not gonna have enough power, enough float. Same with the board. If you use a board that's too small, you're not gonna have enough float on the water, and then you're gonna be struggling with the stability. And if you have a small wing, you're also gonna be struggling to generate enough power. So you're always gonna wanna make sure that your beginner equipment is scaled properly, because if you don't have the proper gear, you're gonna be wondering, why isn't this working out? What's happening? And I've seen this time and time again where people just have the wrong gear, and they have the willpower, they have the strength, they have roughly enough balance, you know, they have pretty much everything on their side, but the gear is just not the right gear. So of course, it just doesn't work out for them and they can't get riding. So in any case, remembering, on most of the websites, they're gonna give you recommendations, but generally speaking, I've seen some websites where they're saying, hey, you should only go 20 liters more than your weight in kilos, but I don't think this is right. This is probably some ChatGPT created content. But generally speaking, after giving hundreds of lessons to all types of different individuals, from kids to smaller individuals, to larger individuals, to older individuals, we've seen that generally speaking, 110 liters for the small medium side of the world, and then 130 liters for the large, extra large sort of side of the world. And if you're on the XXL side or you have a balancing issue just because of age or whatever it might be, then you're gonna have to even consider even a larger board. And apart from that, in terms of the rest, you know, your leash, you're gonna want a leash that's the length of the board. So if you have a 6 foot long board, this is 6'2", we're gonna have a 6-foot leash minimum on it. If the leash is too short, the board can become a danger to you, and this is not what you want while you're learning. In terms of the helmet, in terms of the impact vest, you scale that accordingly. Same with your waist leash, you scale that accordingly. We have a video that we made a couple years ago of a budget-friendly waist leash that you can create yourself. We started now using the Monero ones just because they're nice, they're durable, but there is a budget-friendly way that you could do it yourself with the leashes that come with your wing or with your kite. So that's just an easy way to do it. And other than that, you scale your wing into whatever you need. And with the foil, as we mentioned, generally you're gonna wanna scale it with the board. So if you have a bigger board, you're gonna wanna have a bigger foil. So for example, those 130-liter boards or the larger sizes of any company, you're probably gonna have a 2000 or 2200 foil, or even 2400, depends on what brand you're using, front wing, and then you scale accordingly. So that's pretty much it, guys, in terms of how to select your board and what to sort of do to set it up. As you saw, we set up this board in a matter of minutes. The new ways of preparing equipment is very easy. There is one part that we didn't really mention, is that the length of the screws will matter. So you're gonna have usually between 2 to 3 different screw lengths that you're gonna need. It all comes with the gear when you buy it, which is something to remember, that you wanna use the right screw in the right spot to make sure that your foil is gonna hold on, to make sure that your track system is gonna hold on. If you use a screw that's too short, this is no good. It might rip off your foil or your mount, your mast from your board. And if you have screws that are too long, it's also not gonna properly connect itself. So that's pretty much it, guys. This is Charles Osterlund with Liquid Blue Cabarete in Cabarete, Dominican Republic. And as you can tell, we had a little bit of rain. Now the rain stopped. And that's pretty much it. So not every day is a sunny day, but it is a good day. And I'll leave you with the rain, I guess. Enjoy.